This episode includes Gita Dhyana Shloka, Introduction, the difference between Atma and Anatma, a brief introduction to Karma Yoga, and the characteristics of a steady person. मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्. I bow down to Sri Krishna, the source of joy, whose compassion brings speech to the lips of the dumb and carries the lame over mountains. Welcome everyone to Vedic Treasure. This is Shritika Manoj, hoping all of you are doing good. If you're new to the channel, please click the link below in the description box for the previous episodes. So they say, there are two kinds of people in this world, wise and otherwise. And Bhagavad Gita is a journey from the otherwise to the wise. The second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sankhya Yoga, begins with a universal question that we all have in our lives. That is, what are we meant to do in our life? Arjuna asked this defining question in this chapter. What should I do? Which way should I choose? Please guide me. In the previous episode, Krishna said, don't grieve, Arjuna. You are beyond your roles. Now, roles. What is this role? Let's understand a little bit. In our scriptures, it is mentioned ashramas. We have 4 ashramas. That is brahmacharya or the student life, the grihastha or the householder, vanaprastha where you renounce, retire, and sannyasa, complete renunciation. Each stage of life is not only a natural part of the journey from cradle to grave, but it is an opportunity for each one of us to develop spirituality. Every stage of life has a role to be played, and there are prescribed duties and functions to play it. If we play it 100%, there will be a healthy restraint in our impulsive nature of human. And generally, we choose to do a particular thing depending on the role which we identify at that particular time. When things are going smoothly and when we know what to do next, the road seems to be smooth. But we all reach a point where there is a transaction, there are 2 paths. That's when the confusion sets in. So now let's take an example of a judge who has been convicting, passing orders regarding all the crimes and criminals. Now there came a point when his own son was convicted for a crime. Now, what will he do? There are 2 courses of action here, which are seemingly either correct or wrong. The judge, as a functional profession, is confused to convict his own son as a father. So there are 2 roles which he is playing currently, the role of a father and the role of a judge. What will he choose will depend on the role he identifies himself with. It can be the role of the judge, where he decides that he should be punished and he sends him to the jail. And if he relates himself to be a father more, he will try many ways by which he can save his son. These two course of action, which neither are clearly right or wrong, such junction, such point we all face in our lives. What do we do at that time? Is the question raised by Arjuna, who himself is confused between his two roles, that of a Kshatriya who has to war no matter what comes, and that of a Kuru Nandana, a member of the Kuru dynasty. How can he fight against his own members? That's the confusion Arjuna has. That's when Krishna says, we have various functional identities. Either we are in the different stages of life, or any professional role which we are playing. He says, under all these various identities, there is one fundamental identity, and that is the Atman, or the soul, the unchangeable, the constant, which you need to identify. Albert Einstein interestingly gives a statement. A problem cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness that created it. Which means Arjuna is identifying both the roles of a Kuru Nandana and a Kshatriya at the same conscious level. That is, he identifies with the external actions only. Which means Arjuna's confusion is between the roles he is playing. One is he is a Kuru Nandana and the other being Kshatriya. Both are at the same conscious level because both identify the external, the physical. So what Krishna is asking you to do is to come to the level, conscious level of the Atma, to deal with the problem of Anatma. Shlokas 11 to 37 introduces the Atma Anatma discrimination, the differentiation between the two by Lord Sri Krishna. We have dealt with this in depth in our previous episode, which we will provide the link for. We'll have a brief recap of the same now. Many types of discriminatory knowledge are used to establish the differentiation between the two, and it depends on how we look at the Anatma entity. If Anatma is taken as three shariras, then Shariratraya Viveka is the method. If Anatma is perceived as the three states of existence, then the knowledge of Avastatrayam is the path. If Anatma is equated with Panchakoshas, then the knowledge of 5 sheets has to be pursued. If the Anatma is taken as the knowledge of the seer and the seen, then Drik Drishya Viveka is to be taken. The Panchakoshas are otherwise differentiated into 3 bodies, namely gross, subtle and causal bodies. And beyond that, we have the spirit or the consciousness. So, the matter and spirit are so closely intermingled that we lack the discriminating knowledge. We mistake the matter and namely the Panchakoshas for the Atma or the spirit. We humans are pure conscious beings, and that is what differentiates us from the other species on this earth. We can consciously realize the various aspects of the Atman. Consciousness is not a part, property of the mind-body complex. It is an independent entity which lends its consciousness to the mind and body complex. It enlivens our body. This can be understood better with the analogy of cinema screen and light and shadow, where the light and shadow represent the characters or the roles. In the beginning, we notice the screen, but as soon as the lights and shadows appear, we kind of ignore the screen and focus our complete attention to the characters formed by the shadows, light and shadows. This figurative covering of reality is called avarna in scriptures. And when the characters take the role of avarna, it is called kosha, or the sheets, which is actually not there, but still we aren't able to see the reality. So to reach this true nature and identify with the self, we need to remove this avarna. In our lives also, we tend to take up the role and characteristics seriously and lose sight on the screen called Atma. In this episode, we will take what all is not covered in the previous episodes. We started with the philosophical approach in the previous episode. This includes the Atma and its attribute explained by Krishna. So let's have a look at it. The first step in Vedanta study is to discriminate between the self and not self. In Sanskrit, it is called Atma Anatma Viveka. Anatma refers to the absence of self. It also means objective reality, or what is not the self. Anatma represents all that exists outside the self or other than the self, which could be identified with a name and form and possessed by a physical self, which was made up of the mind and the body. The physical self or the beingness was neither eternal nor imperishable, but was a part of the objective reality. Now let's look at the Atma. Atma literally means the self. If the material consciousness is called the Anatma, then the non-material consciousness is called the Atma. Features of Atma. Atma is of the nature of consciousness. Hence, it is an independent principle. It is attributeless or nirguna. It is eternal and beyond the point. Hence, it is all-pervasive and non-dual. This ends the philosophical approach given by Krishna. Now let's look at the ethical angle, the ethical approach explained by Krishna. For this, let's hear to what Krishna says.
Swadharmapi cha vikshya na vikampitumārhasi dharma yadi yuddhat shreyo nyakshatriyasya na vidyate.
So what does Krishna say? He explains that many people will find it difficult to understand the philosophical approach, the Atma entity, as it needs an accurate understanding of our scriptures, which many people lack. Hence, he presents the ethical angle, the ethical approach. He says, Arjuna, if you didn't understand Atma, it doesn't matter. But from the standpoint of your ashrama, do your duty. Because dharma is more important than your relationships. He introduces the word swadharma. What does that mean? It means the roles and the duty specific to the ashrama you are in, the stage of life and the role which you are playing. It is mentioned in our scriptures to perform our duties irrespective of what may come. Generally, violence is considered adharma. But in crisis situation like this, where we need to uphold dharma, and where nothing is working out, we need to use violence to maintain the law and order. Krishna tells Arjuna that you come under the Kshatriya and their duty is to only fight. And this cannot be done by anyone else. Further, he adds, don't look upon this war as a tragedy. Rather, look it as an opportunity, a blessing to sacrifice your life for the sake of dharma. Now let's see what Krishna has to say regarding the worldly approach, the Laukika Drishti.
अकीर्तिं चापि भूतानि कथयिष्यन्ति ते व्ययाम् सम्भावितस्य चाकीर्तिर्मरणादातिरिच्यते.
People may say that I don't believe in the Atma, nor do I believe in the Dharma, because that which I cannot perceive and that which I cannot experientially demonstrate, I do not believe. For them, Krishna says, still you have to fight this war. If you do not fight this war, your respect, your status will come down in the society. You will lose all your name and fame. As the honor is more important than the life. In the verse, he explains that all the people will talk insultingly, criticizingly, and belittle you. They will give permanent infamy to your family, which will continue from generation to generation. Having enjoyed the fame of the best warrior, you will fall down to ill fame, which is worse than the pain of death. So Arjuna, continue to fight. With this, we come to the end of the three-step approach by Krishna. Now let's move into a brief introduction to Karma Yoga. In the earlier section, Jagadguru Lord Krishna explains to Arjuna the Atma Jnanam, which is the only solution to his samsara. Krishna convinces Arjuna to resume his Swadharma through the three-step approaches he had mentioned in the previous section. But then why he chose to talk about Karma Yoga in this section? Let's find out. Krishna teaches Karma Yoga with a dual purpose. Number one being, Karma Yoga is the stepping stone to Jnana Yoga. How? Atma Jnanam is difficult because the prerequisite for it is purity of mind or Chitta Shuddhi, and not everyone has it. So here Lord Krishna presents Karma Yoga as a means to acquire this Chitta Shuddhi, so that it will make anyone capable to understand Jnana Yoga more clearly. And the second purpose of teaching Karma Yoga is to understand how to do an unpleasant act. Even though Arjuna was convinced to take up his Swadharma, still the act he was about to do was unpleasant. So here Krishna teaches Arjuna how to do this unpleasant act. Karma Yoga means karma is right action. Yoga is right attitude to perform that right action. To overcome the unpleasantness of an act, Krishna advises us to have the right attitude, which he calls samatvam, to have a balance in mind. It is the capacity of a person to remain calm even in the worst crisis of his life. Yes. Because when the mind is disturbed, it loses the capacity of discrimination, and hence this leads to wrong decisions. And one will lose the capacity of learning from the experience. Samatvam is a state of balanced mind which allows the intellect to perform sattvic actions and in turn develop Ishvara Prasada Bhava externally and Prasada Buddhi internally. Now what does that mean? Ishvara Arpana Bhava, to surrender your duty towards Lord. Do the action for the action and not for the results. And Prasada Buddhi, accept whatever may come, success or failure, with a calm mind. So Karma Yoga is about performing your actions with an attitude of an offering towards Lord and receiving the results, whether good or bad, successful or failure, as a gift, Prasada Buddhi. And what do we do generally? We accept what is good and reject which didn't work out as per our wish. And Krishna here makes it a specific note that life will give you both good and bad. Accept both of them with an equal mind. Then only you can reach your greatness. Otherwise, if you succumb to your results, you only remain ordinary. That is the difference between an ordinary man and a great person. You can go and ask to any great person. He will only tell that he has accepted all his failures as equally to his successes. Hence, he has reached wherever he is. Now let's look at the verse which is commonly used and which explains the principle of Karma Yoga.
Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalaheturbhur ma te sangostva karmani.
Let's understand this verse in terms of Anatma and Atma. When we perform an action, there are two things happening: the action as well as the experience of the performance. The Anatma performs and the Atma experiences. Please note, the Anatma performs and the Atma experiences. So the principle here is, when you act, when you perform an action, you have a free choice to choose your goals and work for it. But whereas when it comes to the result, you have no choice, because they say the contributing factors of the results includes not only you, because there are many contributing factors which lead to the final result. It is not only your action. This is the conflict between free will and fate. Further, Krishna adds, just because the result or the karma phalam is not under our control, we should not stop acting or performing the duty. We should continue performing the duty with a mental preparedness to face any result. We should only focus on inner growth and the experience of the action and treat the result as a byproduct only. Only then happiness will not depend on the results. Only then can we enjoy our life in the true sense. It is said that the world may judge you by the external accomplishments, but you must learn to judge yourself by your internal accomplishments. It's very human to crave for applause, recognition, and acclaim. We all want to be appreciated by our peers and to be known among our tribe. That's where Karma Yoga plays an important role, as it helps to remove the notions of doership, taking credit of your work. Harry Truman famously quotes, "You can accomplish anything in life provided you do not mind who gets the credit." We will be dealing with other aspects of Karma Yoga in Chapter 3, as it is about Karma Yoga. Hence, let's move on to the last topic of Chapter 2, that is the characteristics of a steady person. Here Arjuna asks Lord Shri Krishna that if a person successfully works on Karma Yoga and then Jnana Yoga, what will be his characteristics after the end of the last stage? Arjuna calls such a Jnani a Stithapragna. Stithapragna is one whose knowledge is free from all doubts. Arjuna wants to know how such a Jnani will conduct himself in this world and what will be his state of mind. To know that all these efforts he would take in order to become a Stithapragna.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogatan atman yevatmana tushta stithapragna sadochyate.
Now let's see what Lord Krishna says to Arjuna. A Jnani has discovered that he is the Atma and he completely believes and functions through a finite medium called the Anatma, or the body-mind complex. A jnani can give up anything without feeling that he is missing that. He can use the sense organs but never become a slave of the same. He uses the mind but never becomes the slave of the mind. He discovers fulfillment in him or herself, which is called Purnatvam. Self-fulfillment is Purnatvam, when we get freedom from binding desires and abides in the self, freedom from attachment, freedom from fear, freedom from anger. We perform duties of life. We focus in performing the duties of life and do not bother about the results. At the end, Krishna compares a jnani to an ocean. He says, when the rivers are full and they pour into the ocean remains unaffected. The ocean remains unaffected even when the rivers do not flow into it. This samatvam, or the balance of mind in prosperity as well as in adversity, is the benefit of being a Stithapragna. O Arjuna, you have to go through Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga and then eventually become a Stithapragna to reach this state of mind. With this, we come to the end of Chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga. A world of information and guidelines to follow and lead a happier life. It's preferable to chant the shlokas of this chapter and to understand the translations of the shlokas. We will provide you the videos in the description box with the translation as well as the uninterrupted chant. I would request all of you to chant and understand it a little more deeply till we begin Chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Thank you and stay tuned for the next episode.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti.